Wow. So moving on from Fox, NBC.
That was another lovely experience. This is like destitution derby, all the terrible things that have happened to MK. But no, thank you. Back to my motto. You know, that was a bizarre year and a half. And a terrible fit. The one good thing that came out of that is I did interview Putin, which you mentioned at the top, and I loved that. That was really cool. I was not well received by the audience, the executives, or the talent. I just kind of went out of the frying pan and into the fire. You know, I thought it was going to be a better situation than Fox. It was worse in every way. And I knew it was going to be bad. Then, like the night before I went there, I think it was the night before I started there, I had this like foreboding feeling come over me. And I remember saying something like, I think my career has already been ruined. I just have yet to have the wave wash over me. I think whatever has been done to me in terms of my ability to be in this business has been done already. And I'm just the consequences are about to come. It was a very scary feeling. And I went out there, and from day one, you can almost see that uncertainty on me and almost trepidation when you watch the early shows that I did there and my initial appearances there. I changed my wardrobe because I thought I needed to be more daytimey. My look was different. My hair and makeup team changed. My makeup guy, he was great, but it was a different look. It just didn't work on any level. And in some ways, I was trying to change myself. I was trying to turn the page, get a new chapter going. Like, come on.
Reinvent.
It's been a rough fucking couple of years. Like, come on. Gonna see my kids. Gonna do more uplifting stories. Gonna take a step away from politics for a while. This is gonna be good for me. This is gonna be good for me. And I'll tell you, the one other thing that came out of that year that was really good, I did have a lot of amazing guests on that show who I loved and who were sort of amazing and inspirational. And the audience, the in-studio audience, I loved. They were so fun. I made actual friendships in that group. The regulars who would come, we talk about our problems every day before and after the show. And I hated that I never got to say goodbye to them. When they kick you out of TV, they kick you hard and you just go running. But that ended because it needed to end. At the time, it ended traumatically and in ruination. However, I've since become a big fan of cancel culture. It separates you from a place you didn't belong, a place with different values than your own. So technically I wasn't fired. I just lost my show. But that happened because I made a comment about Halloween costumes and the way it used to be, saying, when did it change and how is it racist? And you're just not allowed to have that conversation at NBC. You can't do what we do in this lane. And let's just say there were some other things going on there behind the scenes. But really the big picture is it happened because it needed to happen. NBC wasn't wrong. It was not a good fit. I knew it too. It's just, what do you do? Do you give up in the middle of a contract? Where do you go? What do you do? Like, a lot of bad will had already been ginned up about me with some in the populace, some diehard Trump fans who were still angry, some on the left who were pissed I made up with Trump. It's just, a lot of different weird constituencies. I kind of got canceled by the right and then later by the left.
Man, what did it feel like for you to sit down in front of Putin?
Great. I enjoyed that thoroughly.
Did you?
Yeah.
Were you fearful at all?
Only in one moment. He's definitely had journalists killed. It's a problem. And we actually had a plane on standby because we were worried that something could happen. Like, we talked about having a plane on standby. I can't actually remember whether we did it, but we were worried about him. And we sat together. I've interviewed him now 5 times. I mean, a few times. I did a couple things, a couple days together. And then I went back and we did more a year later. And it was when I was moderating his economic conference with Prime Minister Modi of India that I got in his face about the chemical weapons in Syria and how Russia had helped fund Assad. And he got really pissed. He definitely, that was the one thing I asked him, and of all the things that he was genuinely angry about, and you could almost see the switch flip in his head where he went to genuine anger. And I remember being like, whoa, I got to pull back. Like, I've crossed some imaginary line I didn't know was there, a tripwire. And I did pull back. And enough that he continued to grant me more interviews and so on. But what a dynamic, fascinating, terrible man.
Man, that's to go over there and put yourself in that situation that takes a lot of courage.
It was crazy. Russia was so different. It was so beautiful. And the people were so, so nice and love America. The people there love Americans. Love. It's not the way it is at the leadership level. But the women over there, they love a strong man. I mean, American women kind of love a strong man, at least conservative. I don't know about the liberals.
They used to.
They like the soy boys. But that's one of the reasons why he's so popular. And, just the dynamic of the guy was fascinating. It's like he knew how to manipulate me, or at least I could see when he was trying. He knew how to be angry when the situation called for anger, to be charming when the situation called for charm. And I have to say, he was very generous with me in terms of the time and no restrictions. He brought me into this weird sort of state dinner between he and Modi, where suddenly I was like the third party between these two giants. Like, oh my God, what's going on? What am I doing here? So anyway, I enjoyed it. I got everything I needed from it. And I actually think it's not out of the question I'd go back and interview him again.
Would you really?
Yeah.
I know everybody out there has to be just as frustrated as I am when it comes to the BS and the rhetoric that the mainstream media continuously tries to force feed us. And I also know how frustrating it can be to try to find some type of a reliable news source. It's getting really hard to find the truth and what's going on in the country and in the world. And so one thing we've done here at Shawn Ryan Show is we are developing our newsletter. And the first contributor to the newsletter that we have is a woman, former CIA targeter. Some of you may know her as Sarah Adams, call sign Superbad. She's made 2 different appearances here on the Shawn Ryan Show. And some of the stuff that she has uncovered and broke on this show is just absolutely mind-blowing. And so I've asked her if she would contribute to the newsletter and give us a weekly intelligence brief. So it's going to be all things terrorists, how terrorists are coming up through the southern border, how they're entering the country, how they're traveling, what these different terrorist organizations throughout the world are up to. And here's the best part, the newsletter is actually free. We're not going to spam you. It's about 1 newsletter a week, maybe 2 if we release 2 shows. The only other thing that's going to be in there besides the intel brief is if we have a new product or something like that. But like I said, it's a free CIA intelligence brief. Sign up. Links in the description or in the comments. We'll see you in the newsletter. Attention creators, we see you guys ripping our content and putting it all over social media. We've seen it on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, you name it. Here's the deal. We absolutely love it. Some of the reels you guys are making are getting over 20 million views. Here's the deal. We wanted to make it even easier on you, so we've created a link. It's down in the description of every single Shawn Ryan Show episode. It has thousands and thousands of raw cut reels for you to download for free, turn it into your own creation, monetize it, put it everywhere you want. All we ask is that you tag The Shawn Ryan Show in the description. Thank you. Let's see what you got.
He liked the tough questions. Other than that one thing, he liked the tough questions.
Who were some of the other interviews that you just really enjoyed or got something out of or are proud of?
I really love Judge Judy. I do. She's full of so much wisdom. I always loved talking to her whenever she came on my show. There was nothing like the Wounded Warrior interviews that I did at Fox in particular. And now on my show, we do a deep dive every Memorial Day with like a storied vet. And they're just the best. They're just crushers, from Rob O'Neill to Dakota Meyer to Jason Redman to Marcus Luttrell. Like, these are giants, and their stories are just incredible. They stay with me. Like, there's just a special thing about military guys, the ones who have been hurt and the ones who haven't. They've all had trauma. If they've served, they've had trauma. And there's a wisdom that comes with it. There's like a depth that comes after something like that just takes you guys to this other plane. And I don't even know if you know you're there, but you're all operating on this other plane that's just higher. It's not, you don't have problems, you don't have real life, foibles and things you change, but there's a level of advice, perspective, thought about our world, about our lives here that you can't get anywhere else. I've yet to get it from anybody else. And the same was true at Fox. We used to do a show every year to help Tunnel to Towers, which helps severely wounded vets coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and will also help fallen police officers and firemen and their family. But these are guys who have generally lost 3, maybe 4 limbs, and they need houses built for them. And Tunnels to Towers does it, and Gary Sinise and his foundation too. And I would get like nervous before those shows because they're hard. Like, it's sad. You don't want to ask the wrong thing. It's like the last thing you want to do is add to their upset, say something stupid that's going to trigger these poor guys who have been through enough. It's just like, you're like, oh, it's hard. But I would do it. And every time they were so good to me, they would make it so easy. They would never be offended by something. That was all in my head. And then you'd leave having raised all this money for these guys, and they were so grateful. All they want is to like walk across the floor. All that stuff would put such perspective in my life. It was like, what are my stupid problems? Even now, like, look at all the stuff I've been whining about. Like, what are you saying? You're so weak. These other guys, they have actual problems. They have life-altering injuries that they wake up thinking about and have to deal with all day, every day. And they have kids, and they have bills to pay. So, like, for me, they were important too, because you know how they say, like, touch grass? That's touching grass. That's get over yourself,
Well, I don't think that about you. It's all perspective.
You got to stay in touch with that. Like, the reason we do the thing on Memorial Day every year is because I think we're getting away from that as a society. And we don't just do a Memorial Day. I'm just saying that's like a big one that we'll do. We're kind of like, as we've turned against our military leaders, I feel like we're forgetting about our military men and women. Like, when I was on Fox, we used to highlight military members all the time. Granted, we had 2 wars going on, so it was a little different posture. But those guys are still around, as you well know. Many suffering, still need our help. Kind of like, the forever wars are over, so we're good.
Yeah. Well, the media doesn't do a very good job of bringing it up anymore, so thank you for doing what you're doing.
Oh, I'll give a shout out to one of my competitors, and that's Jake Tapper. He does a very good job of remembering our service members. And he has a charity that raises money for them every year. I always try to participate in it, but that takes a lot of work and effort, and he does it religiously. He's very good to the troops. And I know people don't like him because he hates Trump, but I like him, and I really appreciate what he does.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting him once. Seemed like a really nice guy.
Did he?
He did.
Good.
We spoke together at the National Press Club for the 13 families.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Gold Star families from Abbey
Yeah.
and
The ones that President Biden forgot to acknowledge, forgot exist.
the same ones. And man, yeah.
That was dark.
Yes, it was. Still is.
There was one interview that I remember as well that, like, there's so many over the years, but this news reporter was killed on the air by a stalker. Like, she was attacked at her newsroom, I think it was, and she was killed by this stalker, very young girl, young woman. And her dad came on my show that night to talk about it. And the one thing he didn't want was he didn't want to see the setup package, you know, telling the audience what happened. And of course, we had done 15 different things to make sure that he did not see the setup package. But something happened and he got it fed to his ear. And when he started the interview, he was upset. He was angry, rightfully so. And I just remember that feeling of like, oh my God, like we let this poor man down on the one thing he needed. I felt so bad, but he managed to get through it. And I managed to sort of get him able to talk. And like, those are the things you remember, the ones that affected you emotionally. I guess that's the sort of the theme of my answers. Like a Judge Judy who makes me laugh, makes me so happy. The military guys who make you feel grounded and give you perspective. And then something like that where you had a massive failure and you upset somebody you did not want to upset, you know? It's not easy. This job's not easy.
Yeah. Is there, I mean, do you often regret asking the wrong question maybe, or do you?
No.
No.
Pretty much never. No. I mean, I think the audience is so forgiving. They know you're only human and you're going to say dumb things. And I think it's like you get judged on the body of work. You know, I think, I've been in the business for a long time now. So people know generally who I am and what I stand for. And if I have a bad day or a bad show, or if I say the wrong thing, I deliver the news in a way that wasn't true, which I will always go correct. They know that. They know I'm not a dishonest broker. I'm not there for clicks. I'm not even there for love. I'm there for respect and in service. That's what I'm there for. So I know I'm pretty forgiving when I say something dumb or that I don't feel. That's my bigger sin, that like I say something like, yeah. And then you're like, nah, I don't really feel like that. Right? Like,
Yeah.
Did I really mean yeah? I don't know if I did.
Well, how long was it after you left NBC that you started your show?
So I left NBC in October of 18 and we launched the show September of 20, about 2 years. Is that right? Yeah, 2 years. I wasn't sure I was going to go back into the business at all. Now you can hear in the story just the arc of, how it went from so amazing to not so great. I was like, I don't have to do this. Maybe I'll hang out my shingle again. I could do some sort of law, helping people, or something else. I could reinvent myself another time. And you know what did it? What got me off my couch? It was the post-George Floyd behavior.
That's what did it.
The country losing its mind. I was like, these are lies. These are all lies about the police, about us. and they're lies that are tearing at the very fabric of America. And I need to say all the things that need to be said to correct them. My brother is a cop, and a great cop. Now he's retired, but he was a lieutenant in Albany. And this guy was such an honorable cop the entire time he was in service. He was beaten to within an inch of his life by a gang. They broke his neck. He was in the hospital for a long time, never came out bitter, never complaints. He was so upstanding. And to hear these people smear cops writ large as just all racist, or all bastards, as they were saying at the time, I was like, it's on. Bullshit. Bullshit. I couldn't believe those protests where they were making people say Black Lives Matter. This is America. We don't make people say anything. That's not us. And at the same time, we're in the COVID lockdowns, which I wasn't that excited about. I was pissed off about them. And I was more like, I don't know what to believe. I'm kind of irritated. And then we got to the mandatory masking and I was like, all right, it's on. I don't like being told by anybody that I have to do this or have to do that. I have a fairly strong libertarian streak in me. So I was like, I've got to get off the couch. I must get off the couch. And so we launched the show with me sitting in my kids' playroom with just a little desk and a microphone and 3 people. We actually took a picture of the screen grab. It was just a couple of us like, well, here goes nothing. And I said to my therapist again, I was like, what if nobody listens? And he said, he's from South Africa. And he goes, well, I'll listen. And Doug will listen. So you'll have 2. And that's, now here we are. It's 4 years later.
So you felt a sense of service.
Yes. Yes. I was awash in actual facts that summer about the cops, shooting deaths, race relations in America. Then the COVID stuff came on and all of it. I just became a student of, I was reading nothing but Shelby Steele and Glenn Lowry and listening to all sorts of podcasts from people who were, fair and balanced. Thomas Sowell, not his podcast, but his books. I was listening to Heather McDonald. I was going to leftist sources to hear what are your accusations? Like, what are you saying? I was reading their data to see if they had a point. I was reading Roland Fryer at Harvard and the studies that he was putting out. I was trying to really educate myself on what's real. And once you do that, it's just so clear. My God, the cops, they make 10 million arrests a year. They have 30 million pullovers or interactions. They make 10 million arrests a year. And in, that year that we were looking at, 2018, there were a dozen shootings of unarmed Black men. And unarmed included people who had a glove box with guns who were trying to run down the cop. That's in the 12. That we were being lied to on a massive gaslighting scale. And nobody was talking about the truth. They were too afraid. So that's how the podcast was born. And where we got our, tagline, no BS, no agenda, no fear. And the rest is history.
I always wondered that. And, because it's even during the interview, it sounded like, now you have all the time you want with your kids.
Yeah.
It's not great to make assumptions, but I'm assuming you didn't need to go back to work after that.
Well, I would have had to change some things in my lifestyle, but yes, I would have been just fine.
Yeah. And so there it is. Felt a sense of service.
Oh, yeah. And look, it took me a while to really hit my stride. Like I knew I was going to report facts about these tough issues, and I did, but I wasn't sharing really my opinions as much as I do now. And I had on Mark Cuban very early on. We sparred about his big commitment to DEI and Black Lives Matter, but was just fine taking all the money from China who are genociding the Uyghurs, but human rights matter.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had a feisty exchange on that. But Mark Cuban said something that was very right to me, and I didn't realize it at the time. He was pressing me on my opinion. And I was like, I don't have to give my opinion. I ask the questions, I don't answer them. And he was like, oh no, not on this, not on a podcast, not in this forum. You're going to have to give your opinion. I remember being like, what does he know? He knew a lot. He was right and I was wrong. And now look at me now. Now you can't shut me up. I kind of owe him an apology over that.
Where do you think, when did the media turn to all the lies? When did that happen?
2015.
2015? How does it, what happened?
Trump. There is such a thing as Trump derangement syndrome. He literally drove them crazy. He drove them crazy. Continues to drive them crazy. And they're just so agenda driven. I said I'm not ideological. More journalists should be able to say that. It's not great to be an ideological journalist. It's really not. You're much better off if you really don't like either side and you're not in love with one or the other. All these people, when Joe Biden was stepping down, I love him. I love the man. We shouldn't. Get out of the news business. Stop that.
Yeah.
We shouldn't love our politicians. We should be kicking the tires on our politicians. All of them. Trump too. If you're a fan at home, you're a voter, that's one thing. If you're a member of the media, that's not your job. You're not a cheerleader. You're not there to help him. So I had a real problem with the fact that they all sacrificed their objectivity to get him, to bring him down. And despite their personal beliefs, could never check it. It's fine to actually privately root for somebody and want this candidate to win, or that's human. But to show it, to openly try to make it happen every night on the air is something very different. And they started doing it in 2015. They declared openly that they would now no longer be objective, that they would say Trump is a racist, Trump is a sexist, Trump's an Islamophobe. That's opinion. That's your opinion. You're saying he's a racist because you're also saying that he said there are fine people on both sides at the Charlottesville rally, which is a lie. So your first fact is based on a second underlying faulty fact, which makes you wrong. So you're much better off, if you're going to offer an opinion, saying it's an opinion. In my opinion, he's a racist, he's a sexist, he's a whatever. That's not what they were doing. They were reporting night after night that he was these terrible things, that he had said these terrible things. And they continue to do it. What's happening right now with J.D. Vance is a good example of it. Of course, he had to be crucified because he has too good a story with a working class. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin are too important not to hurt him. Trump has to be kid-gloved for a little while because he just got his head almost blown off. It would look bad. But here's this nice, fresh meat who happened to say some things that were provocative on cable news about women. Get him. Because we need women. We're Democrats. That's how we get elected. So unleash the hounds. He said this stuff. What did he say? I went back. We did a deep dive. You know what was happening when JD was saying that shit? There was a rising conversation on the internet and elsewhere around Mother's Day by these leftists that we don't need children. More and more women are choosing not to have them. More and more women who have them regret it. Deep thought pieces from mothers on how they regret having their children and how you really might want to rethink your decision to have them at all if you're somebody who hasn't. And you had AOC coming out there and saying it might be environmentally unsound and irresponsible. 1/3 of women polled said they felt the same, according to Pew Research.
Is that real?
Yes, a rising tide of children are bad. They're irresponsible and they ruin your life around Mother's Day. So J.D. Vance goes out there and says, defensively, these people are nuts. They sound like sociopaths. We should not be ruled by childless cat ladies who don't think children are worthwhile. And when pressed about, he was making a point about they want 16-year-olds to vote. And he said, if we're going to give 16-year-olds the right to vote, then we should give their parents a heavier weight to their vote. And the single people will have less of a weight. He said it was a thought experiment. It wasn't like, I have a policy proposal. Single people without children shouldn't have their vote counted as much as the married people. That's what happened with J.D. Vance. And he said, I understand people who want kids and can't have them. That's tragic. And my heart goes out to them. And, a lot of people just can't do it, IVF, whatever, which I believe in. But I do think net it's better to have kids because I think it helps ground you and it gives you better perspective on life and your problems. And especially if you're going to run for office, it gives you something real that you can think about and you have real skin in the game in the future. None of that is controversial, but you didn't get any of that context, the lead up, what he was responding to, or his fuller explanations about what happened. You just got, he hates people who don't have kids. He wants to make women have children. That was an actual headline. That he wants to make them have. So the media lies, and in particular, they lie about Republicans, and certainly anyone who's a MAGA Republican.